Hello everyone, my name is Singh and I'm gonna do a quick app in Angular just to give you a preview of how to get started with Angular. In front of your screen you have the three-tier architecture, you have the backend tier, you have the middleware. All this is hosted in your cloud infrastructure. You have Node.js as your main server, what we call, which can talk to the database and can serve the requests that are sent by your clients, which is a browser or an Android or an iOS app. So to get started with Angular, we're gonna have a quick look at cli.angular.io. So first of all, we need to install Angular CLI. I'm just gonna create a quick folder structure. So let's call it Zoo app. We're gonna create a catalog of animals and their count for this demo. Now I'll install Angular CLI. So while Angular installing, I'll just check what's my npm version. So now I can create a server. So for server, I'm going to use a Fastify. And Fastify is an excellent alternative to Express, which is the most popular Node.js framework. So there's Fastify.io, which has a lot of resources. We'll get started with Fastify, but first I'll init the project. So for test, we'll create an endpoint so that we can do curl localhost http localhost. This will do a GET request to see if the server is running. My name is Singh. Yes. Alright, now npm install Fastify. Alright, so what happened here, we have node modules, which has all the dependency packages. We have package.json, which describes the npm init that I did and what packages I've installed. So I can do, this is it. So I've installed one package. It is listed under dependency. Now I'll use Visual Studio Code. And I will create a file here. The file we'll get started with the Fastify documentation. So we include Fastify. I'll just copy this whole thing and we'll go through line by line what it means. So require Fastify gets the Fastify package that exists in Node modules, which can have many other packages, and what it actually returns is a function that we call to create an instance of Fastify. In that call to the function we pass logger true for debugging purposes. Now I want to create a route alive and I want to return server date. So that should return a date. What we are doing is listening at a port. I would like to listen at 8081, and this line is just going to display what port we are listening at, and if there's any error that will be caught here, and we just call this function start, which we have written here. So now we've done that, let's try to do a test npm run test. Now that calls our curl command, which fails right now because we don't have a server running. So I'll start a server. So I have also installed in the parallel Angular CLI. We'll get back to it in a sec. I'm going to open a new terminal where I can start the server. In Fastify I do I need to use node server.js. Now that has started a server, and now I should be able to run a test command, and it has given us the server date. In logging we have a few things logged which you can look at leisure. Now we are going to add some more features to this Fastify server. So I'll start with a simple on server database, so we're not going to have any backend for this demo purpose. Let's say I have a list of animals in the zoo. We call it animals, and what it can have is name. It can have an ID, which is a number, name, and count. Say we have 2 tigers. So that's a database. Now I can create a route similar to get. And I can get animals, so that will return me animals. Now I can do a post to animals. Let's say, so if I do a post to animals, that will be equivalent to put call. You can do a put or a post. So here we will add a new animal which is now inserted as request.animal. And since we are assigning animal something here, we'll have to change it to let. So we have a post. We need a patch to update an animal. Now we can specify an ID of the animal there. Now this ID will be available in request.params.id, and we need to find this in animals. So animals.find a, where animal.id is equal to the ID that we received in there dot. So that's the animal. What I can do is find index, and let's say this is the index of the animal in the array. Now animal dot index, we'll say it will be animals, request dot animal, and we're going to return the updated list of animals. And we would like to have a delete option as well. Fastify.delete /animals/id Singh request. Reply. And we again find the index, and we have to delete that animal. So I can do animals equal to animals dot filter, where animal doesn't have an ID equal to index. Now hang on, we can just check it on the request ID. We do not need to find the index because we are using the filter, and we return animals. Cool, so that's our server now. I'm going to start our server again. Started, beautiful. Now let's get started with building some Angular. So let's see if our test is running. Yep, test works. Okay, on Angular we will start with the basic command of starting an app. So ng, first I'll do Angular version. So we got Angular 9, ng. I'll create a zoo stock as an app. Sorry, ng new zoo stock. Alright. Would you like to do routing? We'll do it later. For styles we use SCSS. It's gonna take a minute. If you're using Windows, then I would recommend you to check out Commander. It gives you certain basic Linux commands which are really helpful if you're doing development on Windows. So check it out, guys, if you're on Windows platform. Alright. Oops. So I do have something here, zoo stock, so I'm gonna go to zoo stock, and there you go. So a standard Angular app has been initialized. I'm going to do ng serve to serve the app. Now Angular app is normally served on port 4200, so you're gonna try a look. So it's still compiling, and while it is compiling, let's look at what ng-new command has done. So it has created the various things. It has installed a number of packages in node modules. It has created this src folder, which is our main app folder. In the app we have an app module, and we do not have any routes here. We have just one component, and that's the component. It just has a title, zoo stock, and an HTML page which has a fair bit of styling. Anyway, let's see. So that page, all that styling displays this, and we have some excellent next steps here. So let's look at what new component does. Cool. So it gives us the command to generate a new component, and similarly you can add your material styling, PWA support, and few other things. So we're gonna get started with generating a new component. So copy that, and back to so it's running Angular now. I can do generate component animals. So that has added a new component, animals, here, and it would have included this animals component in our declaration in the app modules file. So app module file is a file which combines a number of components and creates a module of that. You can use multiple modules within an app, and you can lazy load them. If you want to read about lazy loading, I would recommend Google, do a bit of Google about it. It's a fairly detailed topic. In a nutshell, it doesn't load the whole Angular app in one go. It loads it chunk by chunk as and when user needs certain functionality, which is great. So in our animal component, we have ng on init. We have a constructor. So it implements ng on init lifecycle hook. That's another thing you can Google about. What we're gonna do is have a route here. Import Next, we're gonna create some route, basically a route config. So this is basically a configuration that tells Angular what component to load based on what path that we take the user to. So let's say for default path we want to load the animal component. So I could do here path, empty path. I can do here component, animals component, or I could do it slightly differently, where I define a separate path for animals component and tell Angular to redirect if there's no path, then by default redirect to and I need to specify this property path match full, and we don't specify the slash there. Cool. Now this is the config that I need to provide in this ng module. So we're gonna do it in the imports. So we import the router module and we initialize it for root, because this is the first module that will be loaded for this Angular, and we can lazy load other modules from here. For them we can use for child, but here this is the root module, so we say for root and we specify the config that we have, route config, and we can also specify some configuration here, like use hash true. So what this will do is in our Angular routes it's going to display a hash before the animals route. I'll just show you in a minute. So let's go back to so this is our Angular app. I'm going to do ng serve so I have my Fastify server running, but we haven't built any connectivity yet. That's another thing we can dive into shortly. So it has compiled. Let's have a look. This is our app, ZooStock. I'm going to refresh it. Now you see by default it has gone to /animals path, and you can see that there's a hash before the route, and this is because we said use hash true while initializing the router module. Now next thing we're gonna do is add Angular material just to make some UI look nice. Okay, so add some Angular material, and while I'm here I'm also going to create a new service. So let's do pink, blue, gray. Say no, yes. Alright, while it is doing that, let me just start working on the animals component. So initially when it loads we want to display a list of animals, and for that, in a component, let's say we have a variable animals. It's an array. Now if you're doing an application for enterprise, you may want to use a state management system and have your data that you retrieve from the server store in a state. There are various advantages of doing it that way. It's more robust, and it provides some caching capabilities that you lose if you do it this way. Basically your components get loaded and unloaded from Angular, and you may lose any variable that you have defined within the component, but a state persists for as long as you want. You can even persist it on local storage, and that's a great way, a proper way to do it for an enterprise app. There's many state libraries like ngrx, ngxs. They're absolutely fantastic libraries, but they add complexity to the application. So for the purpose of this demo, we're just going to store it in a variable here. And let's have a look. How did we progress with the installation? So it looks like Angular Materials is installed now. So I'm gonna create a service, ng generate service, and I'm gonna call it zoo service. Let's see what it creates. So it created zoo.service ts file here. So this is the service that we will then use to retrieve, to make a call to a server that we wrote in Fastify to call these endpoints and get and save data to it. So sorry, I'm in component. So let's just create some functions. We say get animals, so this is supposed to get the animals that we have on the server, and to get that we need to use the HTTP client. So I'll say HTTP client probably need to import it manually. Is common. Yeah, that will be HTTP client. So in constructor we pass this HTTP client, and we can use this HTTP client, but I'm going to say that we have a base API URL so say localhost (8081) Now get animals, we say it returns a list of animals. And while we're doing Angular, one of the good things about Angular is that it types things. So let's create a type of animal. So animal will have 3 properties, and define a type as ID is an int, or we have a number, name is a string, count is a number. I can say that get animals will return an array of animals. You see, TypeScript is beautiful. It is saying that this function is not returning the animals as the return type suggests. So that's always a helpful tip for the developer, that you have either returned an incorrect return type, or there's something wrong, or you haven't defined the correct return type, and then that gets carried on to the function, calling another function, calling another function. So makes your code more robust. So to get animals, it's going to be a simple call, this.http.get this.base API URL, and we're going to add the endpoint animals, and then we do subscribe So HTTP is giving an error because I haven't declared it as public here. You could declare it as private, but this is eventually compiled into JavaScript, which doesn't have the concept of public or private. So when we do subscribe, it's going to give us the subscribe has signature of two functions. One is two parameters. One is a result, or I'll call it reply to be consistent with the Fastify, and this is a function which is called if the reply is successful, and the other one is error. So here we're just going to do console.error. Now once we have received the reply, we can just return that reply, but here it gets slightly tricky here. The tricky thing is that the subscribe creates an asynchronous thread. So subscribe will wait for this observable. This returns an observable, and subscribe is going to wait for it, and the call can take a long time over the internet. So anything you return here will be done asynchronously, whereas this function is synchronous and a return type is synchronous. So this doesn't quite work with the asynchronous style of writing code. So I can't just do return reply here. That's bad. So what I probably want to do is say this function will return an observable itself, to which we can subscribe in our component. So instead of subscribing here, I'm going to say this will return an observable of this type, so what happened here is that it's saying that we can't return a type any. Here the http.get call is actually returning an observable of type any, because this class doesn't know what's going to be returned by a server. So we can say a server is expected to return us an observable of type and that's it. So we'll create some other functions to call other endpoints. So this was get. We do post we say post animal, and it's going to return animals. That's fine, but we provide it with an animal object. Of type animal, and when you do the post, we can provide animal as a second argument. Now the third endpoint is patch, so we patch a particular animal here. So patch animal, we do patch animals slash animal dot I. We need to specify again animal that we are patching, and here we say animal dot ID. And specify the animal here. Now we can do delete animal and for delete we specify an ID here. So here we can specify animal again, and make a delete call here. So that's a service. Now it can talk to a Fastify server, and in component I can inject this service public zoo service and in our Angular module we need to say providers zoo service. Now in our ng on init we can say this dot zoo service dot get animals dot subscribe result or reply, and we can say this dot animals equal to reply dot animals. I wrote it in the parameter, it needs to go in the function body. extra bracket. Alright, that looks good. Now in a animal HTML, I can simply say I'm going to use a Angular material list. First of all, let's see if we see this animal works. For that, I'll do a compilation ng-serve. While this is doing that, I'll get rid of existing template that we have here. In the app HTML, so it may recompile because I just removed the template. So what's happening here is we are calling a service get function which internally does the HTTP get call and returns us an observable which emits only one event, which is normal for HTTP call. There can be an observable which emits multiple events, but we want to only emit one event, and then we do a subscribe to that call, and the result is stored in animals. Now in our animals list component, I'm going to just say animals contain. So this will just show us what is actually contained in the animals. So the app has compiled. Let's see how it looks. Alright. So it looks like it's not making the HTTP call that we wanted. Now let's debug why it is not doing that. First of all, I think it might be because I removed the app routes as well from this app. So just doing an undo here. So this is styling. There's div. It seems we don't have any router outlet here. So we need to put an Angular router outlet. Cool, so we have an error here. It says no provider for HTTP client. So we need to provide HTTP client in our imports. HTTP client module. Cool. So animal works, and and our call failed because of CORS policy. Now this is a browser's security feature which prevents cross-browser origin access. So what's actually happening here is that I have an origin localhost 4200 and that's trying to contact another host, localhost 8081, which is, so the browser is suspicious that there's something which is trying to access another website. It could be harmful. Does that website allows? So this website, this host needs to allow cross origin um, to be able to not throw this error and to return a result. So we're going to do that in Fastify now. So for that I'm going to use a Fastify course package. I'm going to kill my Fastify server and do npm install Fastify course. And run a server again. So just gonna move it to the side a little bit. So here now I can use Fastify course. To use Fastify course I need to register the module and provide the configuration. So for the demo purpose I'm going to say origin, we allow everything. And let's see if that fixes a issue. Restart the, so there's a typo here. Cool. Alright, so now we actually received an object. There was an HTTP call and we got a list of animals. Now to display that, what we can do is, for first we can just pass a JSON pipe which will display the JSON in a string format. So there you go, this is coming from a server. If you look at the network, this is our call and we received an array of animals.
Papa, look what you.
Now let's put an interface. So we could use materials list, mat list item, ng4, let a of animals and we could do p mat line, we say id, id, and some spacing. And second line we can display the count. Alright, so one of the things that we need to do before we use material is we need to import the module that we are using, so we can do that in our app modules. So I need to use so looks like I need to manually import this one as well. Cool. While I'm here, I'll use mat button module, mat input module, right, so I think I need to import them individually. Cool, so we imported a bunch of modules here. Let's look at how what we have done in our animal component is created in a material list. And we don't have any list here. So let's look at what is causing our list to not appear. So I'm just gonna inspect so I can see that there is material list here where so it appears that this theme is a dark theme and the text color is actually white. So white on white is that's why not appearing. So that should be simple to fix. We can change our body's background color to something dark. Say so look alright. That looks alright. Now this is our ID, this is name, and this is count. It's not clear that this is count, so we'll just say we now have a list, and I can have some styling here on the item. Normally you would do it with a class. Let's do it with a class. So something which is, wow, what just happened? Let's try again. Alright, that looks slightly better. Okay, now we're going to add maybe a button here to edit or delete it, and we'll add a button to create a new record. So we can get rid of that and say when it is clicked, call a function to display form. We'll create a form in a while. How about we create it as a variable, and the button is displayed only if we are not currently displaying a form. Cool. So we need to add this variable display form. You say it's false in the beginning, and we'll create a function to first let's create buttons first. So we have a new, and here we can say there's 2 buttons. Let's see how it looks. We have edit and delete buttons. So delete is now red. Okay, but these buttons are not going to do anything at the moment. We will create functions for them. So when you click this, we say delete a.id, or we just say delete this particular animal. edit, we say edit A. Alright, now we need to create these functions in our animal component. We say edit a animal. Let's see, we can get this animal from our service and delete a alright. Now if display form is true, we want to be able to display a form. So let's get into forms now. We're going to use reactive forms, and for that I need to import reactive forms module, and in our component I'll create form builder, and we'll create a form in ng on init. We do this.form group, go to this.fb.group, and we say id we can specify the validators here. So we can say id is required, so validators.required will force us to provide an id, otherwise form is not going to be valid. Next we have name. We say initially it is an empty string, but it is required before we submit the form. Then we say count. Again we say initially it's empty, but it's required. You can put other type of validations here. It's an array, so you can add your custom validations as well. So the form is created only once. ng-init is called when the component is initialized. So now we are able to display this form if display form boolean is true. So going back here, this button will be displayed when the form is not displayed. So if someone clicks new, then we can say form say form group is our variable on a component, and here we will display a few fields starting with ID. So I'm going to use material fields here. Mat input material has a number of components here, so we're going to use a basic input like this. You can say this is the ID and input ID value. You're going to bind it to our form control. and then we can repeat it for name, and count, and now that displays something. We need to put a condition that it display only if display form boolean is true. So now when we have new displaying, form will not display, but when I click on new then the form will display. I can add a button here. This will cancel the form, and on click we say display form equal to false, and we will add another form to say another button to say save this record, and that can be primary. Alright, cancel. Alright, okay, so when we do save, let me just say it save new, it's okay, we can use that. We can use some logic here between editing a new one and saving a new one. Editing an existing one or saving a new one. So save, on calling of save we want to create an HTTP request. So we'll use our service this dot, first we'll check this dot form valid. If it is not valid, let's just say we will display a very basic alert pop-up. And return from the function. Otherwise we will create a new record for now. So we specify the value here. The form value so we pass the animal here, which will be the form value, and that should create a record, and that gives us all the animals in this response, so we can subscribe to it. And that will just do this dot animals equal to any reply dot animals. Cool. Let's try saving our first animal now. So I say new id 2 name monkey count 4, and let me just emit something here. Count. So it says form is not valid. It still says form is not valid. So I need to now look into why our validators are still thinking that it's not valid. So I'm going to check here. I can actually console log the whole form group, then we can look at 2 monkey 4 save. Alright, let's look at what we have in a console. So we have 3 controls. This control is invalid. It looks like the form value is coming empty, so it looks like our form is not connected properly. So you need to look at we have a form group here. I think there's a typo name in the we'll just fix this typo. Cool. Now if I do new and I say 2 and I say monkey and I say 4 here, I get an error. Cannot read property ID of. Alright, let's look at it. It's originated in our HTML file, so HTML file, and it is line 31. Right. So it looks like we received a response. Let's see what's the end network call. So network call was network call has returned a null object here. That's not what I expected. So we need to look at our Fastify code. In server, our save method, which is doing this post, is getting the request dot animal, and it is adding it to I think it needs to be request dot body dot animal. Alright, and same with here. If I have request dot animal anywhere, it needs to be body dot animal. Here we have a parameter, so it doesn't matter. So that would require me to restart the Fastify server. Cool. And Now if I refresh, as we don't have a database persisting it, the new record has disappeared. So I can try add it again, save, and there you go. So we have added a new record. Now it looks a little bit odd that the count is in the line below, so I'm just going to add count here in the same line. So instead of a new line, spacer, there you go. Alright, so now let's connect the delete functionality. So when we do a delete, let's do this.zoo service.delete animal a, and we refresh our list. Now going back here, just to remind, we pass the whole animal object here, and in the call we just make the call to the ID in the request parameter. We do not pass any other information from the animal. So let's have a look what happens if we do a delete. So this is our delete call, delete request to animal2, and you can see the response that we received was only one animal. Now we can add it back. There you go. Now let's do a functionality of patching. So going back to a component, when someone clicks edit, let's pre-populate a form with the value of the animal. So this .form group.patch value a will populate the form, and this .display form equal to true. That will display the form. So however, if you save this animal, from the form we will find that it is going to create a new object, because it is going to use our zoo service post animal, and we do not want that. We want it to use the patch. So we are going to create a new property here, or we probably don't need to create a property. We can create a logic in the save itself. So first we check that the form is valid. If it is valid, then we can check whether the animal ID exists in our animals. So if this animals find index a.id equal to this form group id value.id, Now if the index that we find is greater than -1, that means we have found it. We will do a patch, otherwise we will do a post call to insert a new one. So to do patch, this .zoo service .patch animal Alright. Now the value that we'll receive from form value, it appears to be a string. And to compare it with ID, which in the animal prototype animal interface is a number, I'm going to change it to string as well so that our comparisons are consistent. So in our zoo server, I'm going to say ID is a string 1, and I will restart the zoo server. Now let's see. So alright, 2 monkey 4, do a save, and once we do save, I think we should reset our form. How about that? So once we receive a reply, in fact once we know the form is valid, now we should wait for the confirmation before clearing the form. So this .form group .reset, and this is the same code, so I can just copy paste it here. Sorry, this needs to be this .form group .value. Alright. So our server has two. I'm just going to restart the server. So our server has one record, and I'm going to add a second record here. And now let's try edit. So it has pre-populated a record, and if I say I have 5 now, so it has patched the same record, it hasn't added a new record. So yeah, this is our app now, where you can add more records. Let's add a bear. Let's say we have 2 bears. There you go, and let's delete the initial record tiger. Now you can do a lot of tweaks around this, like once you have finished, you have saved, you can say display form equal to false. So for example here, this dot display form equal to false, this dot display form equal to false. Let's see how that behaves. So I'm going to change the count of bear to 3. Now the form disappears and I can add a new, or I can edit one of the existing ones. So I thank you very much for sticking around for this demo, and I will share a link to the GitHub repo where you can play around with this little app and have some fun with Angular. Thank you. This is Singh, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.